While staying with the President's question and answer session in the National Assembly, Ramaphosa was also questioned about the cost of living, which is being driven by increasing food, petrol and electricity prices. We're joined by Public Interest SA founder Tebogo Khaas. Tebogo, good evening to you. Thank you for your time. Of course, people, when we look specifically at the increase in cost of living, we know that just during the COVID-19 pandemic over the last 2 years, inflation has really driven up prices considerably when it comes to that food basket. And people are only going to continue to feel the pinch. Did you feel that the President was clear in terms of what it is government can do to help cushion the impact of these rising costs?
Good evening, Kathy. Yes, certainly. I think you picked it very well because insofar as this statement is concerned, it was very short on detail as to what exactly will government do. And he seems to be all over the place because, as we know, the inflationary pressures have already been with us for quite some time now, and it's got nothing to do with what is happening in Ukraine. And certainly we do agree that the fact that there's a war in Ukraine and it's going to affect harvesting, especially of wheat, which we rely on as an importer of wheat from Ukraine also, it's certainly going to have an inflationary pressure on us because oils, cooking oils, for example, is going to be impacted in terms of the pricing thereof. But there are also other inflationary pressures that we already have been feeling, notwithstanding what is happening with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So the President ought to have come up with a plan as to how best government thinks is going to be able to mitigate the effects such inflationary measures are already having on the local economy. We already know that, for example, travel has also been an inflationary element in terms of the cost that the economy has to pay, from rental cars to airlines. The prices have, in most instances, more than quadrupled. So what has the President going to do over and above what he's addressing around the effect that the war or the invasion of Ukraine is going to have on the economy?
In the absence of any clear plan or strategy from the government, it means that effectively South Africans need to already be figuring out how they're going to be balancing their budgets. From a public interest perspective and an organization such as your own, how are you lobbying behind the scenes and what would you want to see happen here?
You know, what we always hold dear is the fact that government ought to be much more inclusive in these consultations, something that we see very lacking. And we seem to see policies or strategies that seem to be devised on the wire. As we go, we'll figure it, and that wouldn't be very helpful. And because also of the stance that government takes in its own contribution to the elements that causes inflation. For example, insofar as this war is concerned, the invasion is concerned, a government cannot want, on the one hand, to be seen as an independent or trusted arbiter when it's already taken sides and thus contributing to the effects that the supply chains are going to be impacted upon by its own action, despite the fact that, despite the denials by government that it's taking an action, by not siding with those who are invaded or those who are being done wrong against. We are also going to contributing to the wars. So certainly we need to see government consulting widely and broadly and ensuring that it doesn't contract also around the same echo chambers that it seems to be consulting, because certainly the message doesn't seem to be filtering through to government because it seems to be listening to the sectors that you'd like to hear from, but not the truth in terms of what is affecting the ordinary South Africans. And in this instance, government ought to be doing a lot of consultations and a lot of interventions that need to be happening beyond talks of BIG, the basic income grant, and even the 350 social grant that has been extended through COVID.
Tebogo, what are you most worried about?
I'm concerned that, all this will get to a confluence of social unrest or the unease that is building up. Is going to create a perfect storm for social upheavals, because we're not only having inflationary pressure, which most ordinary people don't hear. I mean, don't hear government addressing in terms of how you're going to be able to. If you go to any retailer today, you try and buy a piece of meat, you'll see the price is more than doubled in most instances from what it was a year ago. And it's got nothing to do with Ukraine. So for as long as government is impervious to the cries of ordinary people, and for as long as government also seems to be on the fence on many other important issues, such as the migration issues, in fact, the immigration issue, all this will confluence, will create a perfect storm for social upheaval, and government will be unable to act, as it has shown that it is incapable to act, because inflation will lead and unemployment will lead to a perfect combustible elements for social unrest, and government is not ready. And much as I would hate to say this, we're headed in that direction of even a failed state. If you listen to all the corruption that is also adding into this whole thing, it just creates people to. It will force ordinary people to completely lose faith and hope in government and take action in their own hands.
All right, let's leave it there for today. Public Interest South Africa founder Tebogo Khaas.